November 17th, 2011. The Arab Spring was running its course in the Middle East. The 17th of November was the second revolution to take place in Egypt that year. And it was also the first day I landed in Cairo to teach an acting workshop. A workshop that I would return to lead every year. My workshop is designed to open the actor through a series of exercises so they can then allow that openness to inform their exploration of their characters in the material. Our sessions were held in the Muse Studio, an assembly of large rooms designed in black, white, and natural wood. In the room I worked were the words, "Art is not a crime," painted by a brush on the white wall. In one of these sessions, Marina El-Merceri volunteered to go up in front of a class to do a physical exercise. Her task was to physicalize opposites I called out from the material while she recited the text. Marina was excited to do this exercise after having seen what it did for Inez, another actress. Marina was shapely. Her face was classically long. Her beauty was almost masculine and softened by her fleshy roundness, a lion-like femininity. Her eyes were large and had that weighty heaviness of the Middle East. Her pupils floated upward to the top of her eyes, while the remaining whiteness encompassed the bottom. She had long, heavy, dark hair, bouncy curls that hung against her olive-tanned skin, a full, breathy voice, and almost purple lips. And all of this power and beauty covered under a veil of politeness. Never too much, always staying in her place. Almost as soon as she began the exercise, she stopped. She would start an idea, think, and then freeze, over and over again, repeating the same process. She doubted everything she started and eventually just stood in the center of the floor with her hands to her face, repeating over and over, "I can't do it, I can't." She ran to her seat, sat down, and let her body hang over her knees to the floor, constantly burying her face in her hands and saying, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry." On a break between sessions, Marina told me how unfair her home life felt. She had recently stopped wearing a veil. She shared how her mother-in-law demanded that she stay within the confines of moral custom. She told me her husband was verbally and physically abusive. She said she had no voice in her home. And the piece I had given her was a piece about a woman challenging her mother's belief on marriage. She said the piece brought up too many feelings that she hadn't dealt with. The following week, Marina stopped me before class. She said, "Gee, I want to do the exercise again." Her strength and determination were like that of Medea or Joan of Arc or maybe even Lady Macbeth. She said ever since the last session, she'd been thinking how badly she got stuck. She could not let this opportunity go by. She said she needed this challenge. She had to find out how it felt to let herself feel the way she felt just once. During the exercise, she grounded her feet to the floor, and when some idea came to her, she pushed herself to move. Her voice was loud, and her movements were large and unapologetic. There was an energy of anger and righteousness in her as she would lift her arms into the sky and stretch her fingers. Her words catapulted out of her. The bigness and the fullness of her eyes could be seen even when her head shifted in its upward or downward position. As her tears streamed down her face, she moved. Tears of hurt turned to rage and then laughter. After class, she told me she had broken through something. She said the workshop gave her a curiosity about what else she could do and the confidence to attempt it. She felt more alive, more human. In another session, Bassem stood up in front of the class. Bassem was over 6 feet tall. He was full of friendly-like energy, like an over-enthusiastic puppy. He would clumsily grab my hand or give me a tight bear hug to say hello. From far away, Bassem reeked of perfumed oils, but up close, he smelled of cigarettes that battled a pungent body odor. When he stood up to do his first monologue, his speech was garbled. I asked him to speak only in Arabic, and the class agreed that even in Arabic, his speech was sloppy. He said he had a speech impediment, a lisp. I pushed him to articulate. And with each attempt he made, a ferocious anger accompanied. He fought through it to the end. He over-exaggerated his mouth and facial expressions to articulate. His body shook. Tears formed in his eyes and crept down his cheeks. He yelled out the words of the monologue. After he finished, he stood with clenched fists and looked at me as if he were going to run to me and pound me with his large hands. And then he marched back to his chair and slammed his bottom into it. He sat, brooding and holding on to himself, refusing to look at anyone. Afterward, he grabbed me and pulled me into him. He said something had happened to him when he spoke louder. He squeezed me and thanked me. The following week, Bassem returned to class. He did a movement exercise and was extremely expressive and free. Everything he did and every word he said seemed to release in him a powerful energy. I told him this energy was not new. He did not just find this. Somewhere inside, he was familiar with this kind of expression. Before he sat down, he said he wanted to share something he had discovered. He said when he was a boy, his father would beat him. And the only way he could get his father to stop was to pretend that he couldn't speak. He looked at me with a big smile and said, "I made it all up, G. The whole thing. I made it up." He said I had done something for him. I reminded him it was not me. It was himself. In 2016, I was introduced to Mocha. Mocha's real name was Mohammed, and he was a costume designer. His friends told him to join the workshop. He was tall and slinky. His cheeks were round and puffy, and his hair was silky black and down to his shoulders. And although he was taller than me, when he stood, he pushed all his weight into one hip, making him shorter. Most of the other men in the workshop paraded their masculinity. Mohammed did not. He was soft. Even his laughter. He would let out a sound and then quickly hide behind his hand, covering any outburst that might follow. He had big round circles for eyes, and in the middle of his face were 3 distinct little humps that made up his nose. His skin was the color of sand in the setting sun, layered in orange and red and peanut butter brown. In one session, Mocha sat across from Alvaro, a muscular and self-confident man. The exercise required each of them only to say, "I feel," followed by whatever was influenced by the other person. Mocha was nervous in front of Alvaro, and Alvaro sat confident and self-assured, his spine straight. Mocha's spine was curved and subservient. At one point, Mocha expressed feelings of attraction toward Alvaro. Immediately, Alvaro became nervous. When Mocha saw this, his eyes widened as if he were surprised to witness the power he had. He continued to tell Alvaro his feelings, and with each thing he expressed, Alvaro became more uncomfortable. Mocha's spine straightened as he saw the impact of his words on Alvaro. From that moment on, something changed in Mocha. He started giving his feedback to other actors more readily. He began wearing more fashionable garments to class. And although same-sex relationships are illegal in Egypt, when I returned a year later, Mocha introduced me to a man and proudly whispered, this was his soon-to-be husband. Once after a session, a couple of the actors came to me. "G, come to the revolution." I told them, my revolution is this acting workshop, an artistic revolution. Over these 9 years that I have returned to Egypt, I meet with actors who are eager to take the workshop because of the experiences they have heard from other friends. Although they exist in a culture which oppresses their freedom, they hunger for an inner revolution of self-expression. They long not to just be heard, but to speak out. What has happened in their country has created a fire that smolders inside of them. I have thought that my work in Egypt is to light a candle that allows that fire to shine. But I have found out it is they who have ignited a fire in me.